Hello, y'all. This is your host, Christian Flores with Aspiring Generational Wealth. Today we have, I should have asked. Sorry,
Jeremey Norris.
Jeremy Norris. I was looking at the Facebook too, and I was like, man, Jeremy Norris today.
Yeah, I always say it's Norris, like Norris, but with an E.
Okay, so today he's going to tell us his story about his entrepreneurship journey and then the journey through life.
Yeah, sure. So my main story, I guess, is how I became a filmmaker. So I live in California and I was in the cannabis industry, and I had done all kinds of different things in the cannabis industry. And I was doing a traveling hash competition all over the United States and internationally. And I realized at a certain point early on that this thing we were doing was really special, and I wanted to start documenting it. And so we filmed a few of the earlier events, and I thought we were just going to use it promotionally back then. But as time progressed, I realized what we had was more than that. And that became this project of making a documentary about this event that I was doing. And it took, it's 9 years. And that event, that documentary was just released about, say, 2 months ago. And in that process, I met the people who eventually opened all the doors for me to become a filmmaker. It was many closed doors over and over for years, and many times of me wanting to quit. But eventually I met these people, and they have made it possible for us to make about 20 documentaries. So yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
Okay. So when you said you did the hash journey and then the medical marijuana journey, did you ever think weed would get to the way it is nowadays?
I never thought it would be as rapid as it has been. I thought we would have medical marijuana for a long time before we ever had legalized recreational marijuana stores anywhere. And the way it's kind of turned out, I mean, some places are having recreational marijuana before they even have medical marijuana. So it is a really wild time to be alive, and it's exciting. I'm happy to see it, and I'm disappointed, all in the same.
What makes you disappointed?
Just the corporatization of cannabis that we did not see coming when we were all participating in these legalization efforts. When we were saying all that, and all the music and everything, the whole movement was basically just about people not getting arrested for smoking cannabis and being allowed to grow it. And we did not really talk about like making stores and packaging rules and all of these things that have become what corporate cannabis is. And even the term corporate cannabis, like, it's just I eventually believe it'll work itself out and be a great thing, but it's a real tough growing pain of the legalization process.
Okay. When do you think all states are become legal?
Oh man, the way it's going, I feel like any year now we could knock all the rest of them out in the same year. I'd love to say in 10 years they'll all be for sure legal, but there's a couple states they might hold out, and that's their right. So we'll see. That we might end up with federal legalization before every single state legalizes. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I feel like Texas is gonna be. I'm in Texas, and I feel like Texas is gonna be the hardest to get.
Yeah, there's going to be some that are hard, and there's no medical marijuana and no recreational marijuana in a handful of states, even still.
So I saw that you were a director and producer for Amazon, Fox, and CBS. How was that?
Yeah, we did. So for a while, Amazon was our number one streaming source, but they kind of took a back seat on independent films. As independent documentaries were first, and then they just kind of blanket went with all independent films. And they've opened up a new streaming platform. They own IMDb TV, which is a free streaming platform, and they are changing the name of it to Amazon Free TV or something like that. And they are moving a lot of the independent films over there. So I expect that our films are probably going to get moved over there, and that they'll start picking up our older catalog again and launching them over there on their new free streaming platform. But right now, Fox is our number one platform where they have our stuff streaming. They have a free streaming platform called Tubi TV, and absolutely everything I make is on there. They went back, got all my old stuff, everything.
Okay, I'll definitely have to check it out. You said Tubi, like the TUBI?
TUBI, yeah. And the easiest way to find all of my stuff is to just go to my website. It's theskyisland.com. And I have links to each movie and all the big places where you can watch them. Some of my stuff is on YouTube. Some of it is on Amazon. Some of it is on Pluto or Roku or Apple TV. It's on all kinds of different places. And on my website, I have all those links to each movie. So you can see everything for free.
That's pretty cool. How does it feel to be able to see that kind of stuff? It's like your hard work.
So when it first started happening, it was surreal. And I had my own IMDb page. And it was really, I felt, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome at first, where I was like, this is not really me, I've made this movie with this person, but I didn't feel like, I didn't have $1 million or anything. I wasn't like this big successful movie maker. And I hadn't like gone to school or, paid my dues in the way that I felt genuine about it. So at first I felt kind of a little bit of shame also with it. But now I'm totally proud of it. And I feel very accomplished, even in comparison to some of the people that I've worked with. So I think that comes with just experience. And then for us, we are actually making movies all the time, putting them out there, entering them into film festivals. And, I'm getting the feedback from the public, and some of our stuff has been very successful. So once that starts to happen, that imposter syndrome kind of goes away and you feel more validated.
Nice. So how would like creators get paid if it's on a free platform?
Okay, that's a great question. So for us, we use distributors, and so they take a percentage of our total pay. So let's just use a ballpark number. Like, let's say one of my movies earns $10,000. They are going to take 30%. So that's $3,000 of that would go to the distributor. But they are getting that movie placed on all of the platforms that they work with. And they work with far more platforms than I could ever drum up on my own. And we are too small to really have like an agent that's interested in, maybe now that we've done it for so long, but at first it's so difficult to break in that sort of way. So the opportunity to use a distributor that will take your film I think is really a great thing for low budget creators. And they do documentaries, but they also do, probably mostly they do independent narrative films, like normal theatrical type movies. And as long as they have kind of a certain amount of parameters that you're going to want to hit, and it becomes a little bit more difficult for narratives than it is for documentaries. Documentaries a little bit more forgiving. But using those things, if you can make something that the distributor wants, then I think that really opens the door for you as a filmmaker in a way that really didn't exist for a long time. So for me, I've been able to do that the whole time. And my co-producer partner, he's been doing this for 25 years. So he's told me a little bit more about how it used to be and how difficult it was and how lucky we all are to have it the way that it is. But that being said, it used to be a lot better pay wise. And so the pay is not great for independent streaming right now, but it could get better. And as platforms like Tubi start coming out and getting more and more popular, I think it gets a lot better for independent filmmakers.
Okay. And another question is it like a one-time payment or is it like a residual income?
So no, usually it is not a one-time payment. There are certain platforms that do it that way, where they just pay you a flat rate. But for almost all of the other platforms, they pay you based upon how much the film is watched. And for like Amazon is a great example. When our films are being watched on Amazon, we're usually making somewhere between a penny to 4 cents per hour of people watching the movie. And the way they determine if we're getting paid 4 cents or getting paid 1 cent is all these weird little parameters, like how long in one sitting is the person watching the movie? Are they like liking it? Are they like all those kind of things? Do they stop it and then come back to it? You know, how long of the movie are they able to watch in total? All of that stuff matters a lot. And if you're not at the top of that list, then you're probably getting about a penny. And so at a penny per hour, you can imagine it has to be hundreds of thousands of views. Now, I'll also say we've made thousands of dollars at that rate with Amazon. So some of our movies have been very big successes on there, but we don't get paid great by Amazon anymore.
Makes sense. So it's kind of like YouTube with the analytics.
Yeah, it's very similar to YouTube. And in fact, that's part of why we started putting our movies also on YouTube, because so some of our movies are put on YouTube by our distributors that have deals with certain channels that are on YouTube. But other movies are put on there by ourselves, because as long as our distributor doesn't work with that particular channel, then we can independently still work with other platforms.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I'm just starting a YouTube, and the analytics and the process to get monetized it's a process.
Yes, yeah, it absolutely is. But I'll also say I'm really happy that YouTube exists for independent filmmakers, because it is the absolute most forgiving. You could put anything on YouTube. They don't have any sort of requirements. It doesn't have to be shot with any sort of camera. Like you can go on Netflix and you can look. They have a required camera list. Like if your project wasn't shot with one of these cameras, good luck. So YouTube has nothing like that, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I feel like YouTube is the future, because they're starting the YouTube TV as well.
Yep. I think YouTube is definitely one of the big names for the future. They're taking over.
Yeah, them and Amazon's trying to take over in every aspect.
Amazon is interesting to me because they were the number one place for independent filmmakers for a long time, and they owned that, you know. And for whatever reason, they decided to give up on that and go after these Amazon made projects, you know, their original projects. And those have been okay, but I don't think they're going as well for them as they had wanted. And I'm really hoping that they go back to being the number one place for independent film.
So how does one start in this journey?
So when you ask me, I say just go out and make stuff. You know, my very first movie I shot with like a handy cam, a normal camcorder, and I brought it back home and I just spent time editing it together with, it was videotapes back then. So I used 2 VCRs for videotapes. And then I used a CD player that I plugged into the back of one of the VCRs to put music into it. And that was my first thing that I ever made. And I just showed it to my friends and stuff. And like where we're at now, that is on YouTube, and hundreds of people have seen it. And the potential for making something that becomes popular is, it's endless. There's limitless possibilities. So I say trial and error, get out there, make stuff, and just kind of keep making stuff, and keep trying to make it better as you go on, and don't be discouraged. You're going to not make money for a long time. And that's the hardest part, is just being diligent and not getting discouraged. And a lot of people are going to say discouraging things. Everybody, even now when we make our movies, people always tell me things they think we should have done, or, you know, here's what I didn't like. That's really common. And you just have to kind of let that pass over you, and keep making what you make. And when I make something and I watch it, I kind of like to say, you know, I'm happy with how that turned out, regardless of what people are going to say about it. I feel like the painting we painted it's a beautiful painting. And as it lives on like that, I hope that other people like it. But if nobody likes it, I like it. And I'm happy with how we finished it.
Yeah, I can respect that.
No, that's what I say for everybody. You know, regardless of what you do, you should feel that kind of confidence about what you do.
So I also saw that you were like a MMA writer. How was that?
Yeah. So when I was young, one of the big doors that opened up for me in this whole world of doing all this like more mainstream media stuff was writing for some of the MMA publications when they were first getting started. That sport I saw on these videotapes at like this underground video rental shop in my neighborhood. And they had all kinds of like horrible things in this like bad video section. They had Faces of Death in there and all kinds of like crazy stuff. And they had the UFCs. And I watched some of those early ones, and I got kind of into it. And then they kind of went away. And I learned after the fact that it got banned, and it went through this whole period of time where it was facing all this like terrible financial stuff and legality problems. And I got back into it really shortly after that kind of all had passed. I had a friend that was into it, and he's like, "Hey, it's back." And so I reached out to a website and said, "Hey, you guys are looking for writers. I'm into it. I'd love to write." I got all A's in my English classes, and they said, "Go for it." And so I wrote for MMA Weekly for a while, and I wrote for SureDog for a while. And those have come to become some of the bigger websites in the MMA world, which is really cool.
How have you seen like MMA progress since you started?
Oh my God. Yeah. It was a totally different sport back in the day. There's no gloves. There was no weight classes. There's no time limits. I mean, it was anything goes. And they were marketing it as a brutal blood sport. And the fighters didn't know a lot. You kind of started to see, I remember Marco Ruas was the first guy where he was like very good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but he also was good at like Muay Thai stand up. And that really seemed to be like a different thing. Like, oh, if you could be like that, then you're a really well-rounded fighter. And then people didn't really have that up until that point. Most of the people early on were, karate guy or, sumo wrestler guy or whatever it was, boxer. And they did their one thing, but that was it. And so it was cool to see those things go up against each other also. Now it's a whole different sport. It's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love where it's gone. But I do also miss that like old school style of how it was like the martial arts against each other, which that kind of doesn't exist really anymore.
Yeah. You also so how long did you do the MMA writing?
I did that for a couple of years. And then as I was doing that, that was just on the internet. And I did not get paid for that. I just got to do the articles, and I could get like promotional stuff. So I could say to somebody, hey, hook me up with something and I'm going to write an article about it, and that kind of thing. So I got like classes, and I got like welcomed into places. I used to go to the UFC for free as a journalist. So there was all this cool stuff that I got from doing that, but it didn't make me money. And so a cannabis magazine opened up, and they were looking for writers. And that was my first opportunity of getting published in writing, like in print. And so I did that for free for a little while. And then I was able to get paid by doing some of those articles. So I moved more towards that and away from doing all the stuff that I did with MMA Weekly and the other stuff.
Okay, nice. So when you said that you owned the cannabis store, like, did you own a building, or did you just go through the process and like you built you made hash and you went to like smoke shop, not smoke shops, but like what are they called, like where people try out the best ones?
Yeah. So dispensaries and stuff like that. So I never owned a dispensary, but I worked with dispensaries because I was a grower and a hash maker. And so I did work at some dispensaries for periods of time in trade. And like, I never really had a job at one, but we worked so closely with certain ones that there were times where I got behind the counters and helped out, and then also doing my events. There were days where I had to work at dispensaries because we were giving out all of our judges kits at those shops. So I have a lot of experience with the dispensaries. Selling it to the dispensaries as a grower was it was like a beautiful thing and a really difficult thing, because their prices always stayed pretty much the same, but they constantly would give us less money. And then there would be like times of feast or famine with the dispensaries. So sometimes you would be able to get really good prices when they weren't getting a bunch of good stuff. And then other times it was really, really hard to get any sort of good prices. And you literally would just bring a backpack full of weed into the shop and say, hey, I have weed to sell. And they would say, yeah, bring it back. Let's take a look at it. Or they would say, come back another time when Jimmy is here. And then they would, work it out. But there was you had no documentation that you were required to have. There was nothing. You could just walk in there with weed. And you probably could have just robbed somebody for the weed too. There was nobody checking to see if this was legally obtained. Nobody cared. So yeah, it was a wild time.
Were you ever scared, like you ever get caught?
Oh yeah, I've had all kinds of crazy stuff happen. And the craziest stuff is people trying to rob you at your house for your cannabis before. I mean, I guess some people get robbed after they bring their stuff into the dispensary. So, they're watching you go in with a big backpack full of weed and you come out, the backpack's gone. They know what you got, a big pocket of money. Mm-hmm. So they hit you when you leave the dispensary. And that never happened to me, but it was definitely something I thought about when I was doing business in Oakland. It was scary, they had armed guards at the shops, and people had been murdered in the parking lots. And so, knowing that sort of stuff, you kind of, you operate in a different way. And I'm like I'm just a little white guy. I'm not like some big scary guy. So I've had been a predator's prey all my life, or at least a target for them. So I was aware of it all, and I was lucky and able to maintain safety during most of the stuff that I was able to do. Except at my house, people home invaded me and robbed me a few times, and it was scary.
Yeah, that I bet. And did you grow from your house?
So I had yes and no. So I had small things that I did myself, but when I had a big grow, I basically had a second house that I rented, and I made the whole house into a grow.
Nice.
Yeah. So we grew a lot of weed there for a couple of years, and it was a struggle because we were supposed to grow a lot more weed than we were able to grow. And it was constantly like a catching up process where it never really became the profitable business it was supposed to be. So it was okay. Had a lot of good times though.
Did you ever win an award for making the hash?
So yes, I won a tiny award for my hash in a dispensary thing that it's like one of these, like, I guess you would call them like an influencer type show on YouTube. They were just like their own little show that was about weed. And they went around to the dispensaries in the Southern California, and they got a bunch of different stuff, and then they tried them all out, and then they voted on them on the thing, and mine won that competition. But that is the only competition I ever entered as far as my product, like my cannabis product. I have won the High Times Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam, but that was with a tool. So it wasn't with a cannabis product.
So what do you mean by tool?
So if you've ever heard of dabbing.
Yes, sir.
Myself and my group of friends were some of the early on, like, I guess you would also say, influencers of the dabbing community. We took it on early. We learned about it very early on, and we were really big in the cannabis industry, where we were able to popularize it in a very public way. We were basically just dabbing people out at all these cannabis functions that were happening all over. And I did that in Amsterdam for thousands of people, even people that didn't speak English. And so the very first tool for dabbing was this thing. There was a variety of names. The Thai curve was the Canadian name. The skillet was a name that came out here. And then the one that my friends were doing, we're calling the vapor swing. And they were all basically a little metal plate that swung under a candy cane looking glass attachment. And that's what we took to Amsterdam, and we won the Cannabis Cup with that product. And I dabbed out all kinds of famous cannabis people for their very first time and obliterated them. Yeah, Japanese people too. Like, they couldn't speak English. They'd come up to me and I kind of like hand mime, like, this is what we're doing. They kind of get it, and then we do the whole thing. It was beautiful.
So what kind of celebrities have you met throughout your life?
Oh boy, I've met a lot of celebrities, but that none are like my real friends or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I have some friends who are friends with Joe Rogan. That would be the closest one that is like a big time celebrity. but even that is like, we were in the same jujitsu class. He and I are not friends in any sort of way. He doesn't know me. I would know his Eddie Bravo, the jujitsu teacher, far better, you know. And I've had, I guess, let's see. I mean, I went to school with Mina Suvari, who was in American Pie, and she was in my algebra class, and I used to like throw papers at her. And she yeah, it was the whole thing. I kind of thought she was pretty, and it was just a whole thing back then. And like, I lived in Hollywood, so like living in Hollywood, like Tom Green, Pauly Shore, and the Jeff Goldblum, and like you're just constantly seeing celebrities all, and I don't know celebrities a lot of times, so there's probably a whole bunch that I've like interacted with that I just don't know. But my friends were in music. They're kind of big in music, right? And so Kanye West, we were like, I was in the studio and they were doing all the late registration stuff, and I have this story of smoking out all his friends with a vaporizer and them like getting way too high and like crashing their car. And yeah, so that I have a whole bunch of Hollywoody stuff like that. But you know, all of that. Oh, and the producer of Grandma's Boy was in my class at school. So like, there's all these weird little connections like that, but I don't feel like I'm really connected to Hollywood in like a legitimate way. I like being kind of an outsider, and a lot of those people are real weird. So
Yeah.
yeah, when I've gone to some film festivals, it like, you know, being in the cannabis industry, it gets real ugly too, and you start getting kind of grossed out by the way that it is on the inside. Filmmaking is far worse. The filmmaking people are like really, really gross, and there's like all kinds of weird judgment stuff going on there. So yeah.
No, that's nice. Out of all the things you've done, which one would you which one would you prefer to do for the rest?
I love filmmaking. You know, if we could just make some films that really made it big and I could just work on like less projects and for like longer periods of time, we are very different filmmakers. We're pumping out maybe 10 films a year. Whereas a lot of these documentaries you'll see, they work on one film for like 5 years or something, or longer sometimes. And I like the idea of that. Just working on a single project for like a long period of time, really making something incredible. And I'm the kind of guy that like, of course I need cannabis in my life. So I would have the requirement of being able to like smoke cannabis, but I'd do some crazy stuff. So I'd love to do some sort of really like deep documentary where I dive into some wild lifestyle or something, or nature or whatever it is, you know.
Okay. The timer's about to end, but where can people find
The best place is my website. I mean, you can type my name, Jeremey Norris, into any streaming, like Amazon Fire Stick. If you just type that in, you'll get all my movies. But the best place is my website, theskyisland.com.